The Atheist Debates Patreon project presents, What If the Universe is Both Old and Young? I'm tempted to start with a face palm. This is mostly a little bit of fun, but it touches on some topics that I have an interest with. And actually, when I found it, it was like a TikTok video of what seemed to be a young Christian doing basically bong rip apologetics, which is how I tend to phrase the, but what if, dude, like, what if this and what, and what ended up happening was they said, I'll talk about the specifics of what they said, but they're arguing that what if the universe is actually only 6,000 years old, like the Bible says, but God made it look billions of years old? And the person responding to it, it went kind of like, what if? No. But what if it's not? What if it's old? It's not. And I had a problem with that because, well, that's fun. And I get what you're saying. You can't know that. In fact, you're claiming to essentially have falsified the unfalsifiable. But let me have a little bit of fun with this in what will probably be one of the shorter videos here on the Atheist Debates project. And we'll see, maybe it'll get 10 million views because it's short enough. But what if when God made the first tree, according to whichever religion you're a part of, did he make a seed and plant it, or did he make the tree? Because if he made a tree, then you have to ask, if you were to cut that tree down, would it have tree rings? Tree rings are used to date a tree. Dendrochronology is the process of basically cutting a tree or taking a core sample from the tree and counting the individual rings, because in most trees, in most areas in the world, there's a year-long cycle for those places that have weather and aren't the same all year round. And as a tree grows, new rings form out by the bark. The center of the tree is the oldest. It's newer as it gets older out there. And so it takes around a year for each one of those to form. That represents the full cycle. As of the interesting fact, when I went to look at this, as of 2020, securely dated tree ring data for the Northern Hemisphere are available going back 13,910 years, which is already older than the 10,000 year young Earth model. Although I would say that if they accepted that evidence, they'd probably say, look, we say 6,000 to 10,000 years, but that's an approximation. Maybe it's 13,910, and that dating just found the first tree that God planted. In a previous video that I shot, I talked about how God lies in the Bible, even though it says God can't lie. Basically, in Titus, it says he can't lie, and then in other places he lies. If God created a tree already formed and it had tree rings, that's a lie. Because from our perspective, this dating method, which is reliable and continues, would show that that tree is, let's say, 20 years old when it's really only a second old. So if God made a tree with all of the rings, that would give someone the conclusion that it was 20 years old. That could very well just be viewed as a lie because it's confusing and it's misrepresenting the age of the universe. But there's no way to solve this problem. If God created a seed still has an age. A seed doesn't sprout from a tree instantaneously ready to sprout a new tree. There's some age to it. So he would have had to create an aged seed and plant it. Or did he create the inklings of a seed, put it in the ground and let it, age and grow up naturally? There's no way to know. There's no resolution in this, because if he created anything, instead of letting it evolve through the process naturally, then he's necessarily adding age, making it seem older than it is. Both the seed and the tree, which came first, the seed or the tree, the chicken or the egg, both of these involve the creation of something that is intentionally deceptive. So the TikToker extrapolated this thought of, God made a tree. What if God made everything 6,000 to 10,000 years ago, but made it look billions of years old? Ooh. Well, then you have a prankster God who's being intentionally deceptive. But let's think about that for a minute. One of my favorite philosophers of all time is Bertrand Russell. Bertrand Russell is credited with a number of different things, but also the concept of the 5-minute universe. So I like the fact that some young TikToker, possibly taking a bong rip, has stumbled upon something similar to a thought experiment about the 5-minute universe. The issue here is that when Bertrand Russell talked about this, and I'll read a quote from him, he was specifically addressing skepticism of memory, kind of addressing the fact that everything that we live and experience is necessarily a memory of the past. I just said a word, but by the time I've said it, it's already in the past, and now you just have a memory of the word. So here's Russell's quote. In investigating memory beliefs, there are certain points which must be borne in mind. In the first place, everything constituting a memory belief is happening now, not in the past time to which the belief is said to refer. It is not logically necessary to the existence of a memory belief that the event remembered should have occurred, or even that the past should have existed at all. There is no logical impossibility in the hypothesis that the world sprang into being 5 minutes ago, exactly as it then was, with a population that remembered a wholly unreal past. There is no logically necessary connection between events at different times. Therefore, nothing that is happening now or will happen in the future can disprove the hypothesis that the world began 5 minutes ago. Hence, the occurrences which are called knowledge of the past are logically independent of the past. They are wholly analyzable into the present contents, which might theoretically be just what they are, even if no past had existed. I'm not suggesting that the non-existence of the past should be entertained as a serious hypothesis. Like all skeptical hypotheses, it is logically tenable but uninteresting. All that I'm doing is to use its logical tenability as a help in the analysis of what occurs when we remember. That's the end of the quote. Russell here addresses a number of interesting things. First of all, the concept of a 5-minute universe as a thought experiment specifically to address memory. But he also deals with the foundational view of falsifiability. When he talks about it's not logically necessary that the existence of a memory belief for the event remembered should have occurred, or even that the past should have existed at all. Essentially, the fact that you have a memory of something is a testimony to the memory, not the thing that you have the memory of. And there's no way to falsify the claim that that memory exists absent the events that you remember. So he was talking about skepticism of memory, and that's incredibly important. The 5-minute universe is essentially an unfalsifiable proposition. There's no way to test it. And a universe that is 10 seconds long, 5 minutes old, 10 seconds old, 5 minutes old, 10,000 years old, that looks billions of years old by every available dating method to those who are within it, including our memories for a 10-second or 5-minute universe, is functionally identical to one that is billions of years old. Essentially, from our perspective, a universe that is billions of years old is indistinguishable from one that looks billions of years old, but may only be 10 seconds. Now, as I mentioned, the response to this in the amusing TikTok was, imagine that, no, but what if it's old? No, it's not. And I get that. But you can't claim that you falsified something that is unfalsifiable. It's interesting to think about, but ultimately it's a time waster if the focus is on the age of the universe. The thought experiment doesn't tell us anything about the age of the universe. The thought experiment is about memory. The thought experiment is about solipsism. The thought experiment is about falsifiability. The thought experiment is about the epistemology of memory. It's useful in teaching critical examination of those issues and supporting the significance of falsifiability. It reminds me when I was a kid, independently of any reading of philosophy, I mean, I was a little kid, I used to run around going, what if everybody else isn't real? What if everybody else is a robot? Or a figment of my imagination? What if I'm the only one that's real? What if all of reality is a test just for me? And I'm sure most people have had thoughts like that at various times. It's just that philosophers take those thoughts, run with them, turn them into broader thought experiments, and then publish them. Hey, here's something cool somebody thought about. What if everybody in the world is just a robot? Well, I've talked about what value there is in this thought experiment, but let me give my alternate version. If somebody comes up and says, what if God created the universe 6,000 years ago, but just made it look really old by every measurement we have? The best response you could come up with, if you wanted to be amusing, is, what if God created you as the actual smartest person in the universe, but just made you look very stupid by every measurement we currently have? Whoa. We'll see you next time. It's not stupid, but it's close.